Hi, this is Sean Darrington, Senior Director of Product Management. In this short how-to video, I wanted to demonstrate how to set up remote replication across multiple OneBlox clusters. This can be done in a one direction or a unidirectional sense, but it can also now be done in a bidirectional manner where you have a read-write share replicating to another OneBlox cluster, and on that target cluster you have read-write shares replicating back to the primary ring or the primary cluster. Additionally, organizations can actually use two or more OneBlox rings as targets for a given share, and I'll demonstrate that in this how-to video. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. Now I have a two-step verification enabled on my account. This is an option for all OneSystem admins. That in addition to the password, the first time you can actually enter in the one-time password as an additional level of security. You can obviously check or uncheck the trusted computer if you want to do that every time. So having said that, in this account here in our QA lab and my lab here, I've got three different organizations in a multi-tenant setup. I'm going to go ahead and drill down into mine. Now I already have a number of rings registered in my OneSystem account, as well as I have some very little capacity on each of them, but you can see different ring capacities: 15 terabytes free on London, 7 terabytes free on New York, 16 on Paris, etc. So now the look and feel of OneBlox and how we present the shares and exports for those given OneBlox clusters has changed. In the late May release of OneSystem, we've gone to this tile format where now you see all the different tiles. You see I already have a number of shares set up. So a couple things in just the overall look and feel of this. Number one, for each given share, you have the share name, but then you also have the cluster name. In this case it's London, and you have the appropriate storage policy that's applied to that share, Veeam, on the London cluster. You also understand if it's being replicated, if it's a source or the target, and how many replicas, that is, how many different OneBlox clusters has that share, Veeam, as the target. In this case there are 4 different clusters that this is being replicated to. And you can do different things like filtering the shares, either by looking at only the sources or only the targets, depending upon what your priorities are. You can also search here if you have a lot of shares on different rings. You can actually begin to just type it in and search much more easily that way. So there's a number of ways to filter and view this, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new share, and I'm going to go ahead and choose one of the rings. I'm going to first of all give it a name. I'm just going to go File, Serving. Let's do VMware Archive, and now I'm going to go ahead and choose the London cluster, and since this is a VMware Archive, I'm going to choose NFS. We're going to leave root squashing enabled, and I'm going to choose this storage policy for virtual servers or backup recovery. This has variable length deduplication enabled, it has snapshots disabled, and it also has compression enabled. These are the optimal settings for different virtual servers, whether it be VMware or Hyper-V. If for other purposes, you can do a custom setting where you can adjust the different retention policy of your snapshots, the continuous snapshots. You can also turn it off completely if you'd like to and go all the way over to none. And you can decide if you want compression enabled or variable length deduplication or fixed length deduplication. In this case, again, I'm going to come back to the virtual server storage policy, and now I'm going to click Save. Now this is going to create that share, and now I'm back to the main list where I see the different tiles for the different shares. And so here's my VMware Archive share. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. Now over here on the actions, this is where I can actually begin to replicate. If I already have a share that I'm replicating, I can stop the replication. If for any reason I'd like to do that, I can also resume that, and it'll just pick up right where it left off. Alternatively, this is how you promote a share from a read-only status to a read-write. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and replicate this, and now the next step is I get to choose a target ring. So these are the 4 target clusters that are available, and I'm going to go ahead and choose my Sydney cluster, and I'm going to click Next. Now if I'm going to go over a network where I do have to do network address translation, I'll do the external IP address of my London cluster, as well as the different firewall port that I have to go through. And this is something that, depending upon your organization, you'll know the firewall port information. If you're not going over a wide area network or a different network that needs a separate subnet, you can actually just leave everything blank, and each of the 2 clusters will find themselves, this is the case. In my demonstration here, both clusters are on the same network, so I go ahead and click Finish, and now I'm done. It's literally that easy to determine which share you'd like to replicate to a given target. Now you can see here VMware Archive, this is the source. I've got my backup and virtual server storage policy. And this is actually being replicated now down here to Sydney. And you can see I have a couple things. Number one, the recovery point is still unknown. That initial sync is beginning to take place. And then here is where I display the recovery point objective. This is an example here of another archive share. You can see the RPO of June 2nd, 2206. You can also mouse over this flag which says that everything is healthy, it's being replicated, and the particular RPO is what you see there. This icon here is the target, so you can see which ring is being replicated from. If you look here at this option, this is to tell you how many replicas, in this case archive, is being replicated to. I just showed you the San Francisco archive share is being replicated to the Sydney archive, and that you see here. Right? So now my VMware archive that I just created a moment ago has already been synced to my Sydney cluster. Now in this case I don't actually have any data, so it was a very fast synchronization process. If it's not, all the changed objects on an ongoing basis, the deduplicated objects will be compressed, encrypted in flight, and then sent over to that secondary or tertiary OneBlox cluster. On the initial sync, obviously everything is sent over, so there are the options to locally seed a cluster replication before you move that to a different network. So now let's go ahead and add a second OneBlox cluster as a target. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this selected, and again I'm going to repeat this action to replicate, and now I'm going to be shown no longer 4 OneBlox clusters because I'm already going to Sydney. In this case I'm going to go over to New York, and now I can click next, and again the same thing. They're on the same network. I don't have to enter any external IP address or firewall port. I click finish, and now I'm done. And I can do this again, one more time if you want to go to a third, but it's really up to you in terms of how many different locations you'd like to replicate that information to. We support up to 10 different OneBlox rings in a mesh configuration where you have primary read-write share replicating to multiple read-only shares. It's important to note that in any case of all these share tiles that you see here, only one is read-write at a given time. All the others that are being replicated to different OneBlox clusters are read-only. So that's as easy as it is to replicate a share to one or multiple OneBlox clusters. And then tune into another video and we'll show you and demonstrate how to promote shares from read-only to read-write, as well as how to pause and resume the replication status. Thanks for watching.